Hi! Thank you for checking out my channel on my first YouTube video. Today we're counting down the top 5 fantasy boys' love stories. The first one we're going to talk about is Scent of a Witch. Beyond the borders of the kingdom of Yark is the blighted land of Urin. Peasants and nobility listen with open ears as travelers recount tales of witchcraft. As tensions mount, the third prince of Yark travels outside of his kingdom under a full moon, only to encounter a beautiful woman. While the prince is charmed by her graceful appearance, she isn't all that she seems. Doesn't sound like a boy's love, does it? Well, this graceful lady is actually a man, disguising himself with the power of witchcraft. That's not a spoiler, by the way, as it's revealed in the second chapter. This story is perfect for fans of dark medieval fantasy. It incorporates all the classic elements, enchanted forests, royalty, magic, and it does so without being tropey. Instead, it relies on a serious and immersive tone. Personally, I'm a huge fan of dark fantasies. I love anime like Berserk and Claymore, and while Scent of a Witch isn't anywhere near as intense, it still helps to satisfy that dark fantasy craving. The main characters are as follows. Ryan Yark, the third prince of the kingdom of Yark. Ryan is a charming womanizer who unexpectedly falls for a male witch disguised in female form. Intelligent, ambitious, and courageous, he also tends to be overconfident. His charisma and wit make him a natural leader, but his attraction to the witch leads him into uncharted emotional territory, raising suspicion among those closest to him. Next we have the Witch, a mysterious character who remains unnamed until midway through the story. He gains power by seducing and then killing men who wander into his territory. However, his dark existence is shaken when he develops feelings for Prince Ryan, leading him to question his own path. The romance between the two leads is a slow burn that starts off more as an infatuation, but over time it becomes more genuine. There's also a side couple in this story. The second prince and a classic yandere. Vikid is a sickly and tormented individual who imprisons his physician Ian, claiming it's all out of love. His lifelong loneliness and constant physical pain make him volatile and prone to taking his anger out on his servants. Ian, Prince Vikid's personal physician, trapped in confinement by the prince's obsessive love. Although Ian constantly attempts to escape, he finds himself conflicted, unable to fully hate Vikid despite his captivity. I've gotta say, I really like the side couple story. It's intense and brings about an even darker edge to this already bleak manhwa. Vikid's yandere tendencies and his obsessive love for Ian create a captivating, albeit unsettling dynamic. The relationship might not be traditionally romantic, but it's packed with emotional weight, which makes their story incredibly compelling. The art style in this one is more akin to Japanese manga, as it's one of the few manhwa I've come across that's black and white. The artist uses clean lines and simple character designs, which really emphasize the expressions and emotional depth of each scene. The backgrounds are often sparse, which draws your attention directly to the characters and their interactions. It's a unique, minimalist style that really works well for the story's serious tone. However, because the style is more minimalistic, what I like to call the bishonen factor isn't as prevalent as it is in most boys' love stories. I thought Prince Ryan was attractive, but I wasn't really enamored with any one character, instead focusing more on the story. So I'll give the bishonen factor a 3 out of 10. Now, on to number 4, with the lighthearted, there are weirdos all over the Jianghu. For the first time in his life, 22-year-old Shen Ling attained the status of the King of the Silver Screen, a prestigious award akin to the Oscars. Afterward, while he was holding his trophy and brimming with tears of happiness, a piece of ceiling fell with a loud bang, smashing onto his head. After that, he transmigrated. However, he's dismayed to learn that his previous body's occupant was engaged to another man. This one is a danmei, which if you don't know what that is, it's China's version of boys' love. Being as how it's Chinese, there isn't anything explicit and the kisses are censored. However, as this is something quite different from the usual boys' love I read, I wanted to include it on the list. There are 2 main characters. First is Shen Ling, the adorable and slightly naive protagonist. I was a bit confused when reading this because everyone calls him Linger. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. I didn't find out until much later that the ER is a suffix, kind of like junior is in English. Ling is cute, delicate, and has a naturally feminine appearance. Once an actor, he's suddenly transported to a historical era after an incident, waking up in the body of the youngest son of a wealthy family. Ling gets quite the shock when he finds out the previous host of the body was set to marry another man, the powerful Xiao Yuqin. Xiao Yuqin, the handsome and cunning lord of Zuying Palace, is the love interest of Shen Qianling. Known for his sharp mind and sly demeanor, he often plays tricks on Ling, leaving him flustered and unsure of his intentions. Despite his mischievous nature, Xiaoyu Quin's intelligence and charm make him a captivating presence. His teasing and unpredictable behavior keep Shen Qianling constantly on his toes. I give the Bishonen factor in this one a 6 out of 10. The Seme Xiaoyu Quin is definitely attractive. I really like his long black hair and the historic aesthetic of his clothing. The Uke Shen Qianling looks more like a Bishoujo. He has a very cutesy appearance that many fangirls and fanboys will find desirable, but it isn't personally to my tastes. The story, which is based on a novel, is a light-hearted, humorous read filled with fluffy moments. The comedy here thrives on misunderstandings between the characters, which adds a lot of charm and manages to keep things entertaining. It doesn't dive deeply into world building or complex plot lines, instead focusing on the cute moments and the evolving relationship between the male lead and the protagonist. If you're looking for a fun, feel-good boy love that's easy to enjoy, there are weirdos all over the Jianghu is a perfect choice. Number 3 is Where the Wind Stays by Yusa. To break an ancient curse that plagues the royal bloodline, young Prince Tisara is destined to be sacrificed. Our protagonist Nara is enlisted as a palace servant to carry out the prince's execution when the time comes. However, he develops a soft spot for the cursed prince, and after committing an atrocious and unforgivable act against him, Nara is desperate to right his wrongs. The character designs in this one are absolutely beautiful. This is peak Ikemen content right here. There's a small group of characters, the protagonist's love interest, a side couple, and then some minor characters. Let's start with the protagonist Nara. Nara is tasked with looking after Tisara with the ultimate goal of killing him when the time comes. Despite that, Nara is sweet, kind, and almost overly empathetic, qualities that make him instantly likable. While he isn't the most complex character, his unwavering devotion to Tisara really stands out, making him someone you can't help but root for throughout the story. Next is the love interest, Tisara, also known as the Marked One, a victim of the curse that was placed on the Emperor's bloodline. The story starts off with Tisara as a child, but don't worry, there's no Shotokan here. There's a time skip early on, and the romance only unfolds after Tisara becomes an adult. I absolutely adore the villain-lover trope that defines Tisara's character. You know what I'm talking about, the type that will always put his love interest first and will burn the whole world down to do so. He's not quite a yandere, but he still has that lovesick, all-consuming devotion that I very much enjoy. Next is the side characters. First off is Yidam. I have no idea if I'm saying that right. Yidam is a high-ranking priest from the temple whose goal it is to destroy the Marked One. He suffers from constant headaches, which makes him appear dour and gloomy most of the time. Next off is Haga. Aloof and nonchalant, he gives off minor tsundere vibes. He takes an interest in Yidam, and albeit very slowly, the two become close. Lastly are the squirrel spirits. I absolutely love these little guys. They added some great comic relief to an otherwise serious story. Normally, I don't usually like characters like this. I prefer serious stories to stay serious, but the humor they provided always landed, so I found myself looking forward to their appearances throughout the story. One aspect of the art style I love is how the artist draws monsters. They're scary while also being incredibly cool and unique looking at the same time. While Where the Wind Stays is mainly focused on romance, it has a good blend of supernatural horror that you don't usually see in boys' love stories. Like I mentioned before, the Ikemen content is off the charts for this one, so I'm giving the Bishonen factor an 8 out of 10. The Seme Tisara is hot as fuck. There's just something about the intensity of his gaze that I love. I'm all about the black hair and red eyes. Plus he's got those sexy abs, he's crazy strong, and the curse marks that adorn his body give him an even rougher edge. Then there's Nara. His character design is absolutely beautiful, with a more feminine touch that's become the standard for the sweet Uge archetype. I really like his soft features and long flowing hair. I think he'd make a good 2D husband. Now, I do have to point out a flaw the story suffers from. The dialogue and writing can feel a little clunky at times and could use more subtext. It's hard to say if that's due to the original writing or the translation, but it is noticeable. However, it was really only noticeable in the beginning. Where the Wind Stays is one of those stories that starts off average, but around halfway it really takes off and becomes something amazing. I think it's absolutely worth sticking it out because this manhwa definitely hits its stride in the second half. And since it's a completed series, you can binge it to your heart's content. Personally, once I reached the midpoint, I could not put it down. Coming in at number 2 is How to Be the Chosen One by Face Park. Cho Sun-won finds his life boring and tedious. Sex is the only thing he isn't sick of, but it's getting a little too easy to talk any guy into bed. He wants a new life, a new world, and a new challenge. And he gets all of those when he's summoned into another world as the so-called god of Abroria. That's right, it's an isekai. Lately there's been a surge of boy love isekai popping up, and How to Be the Chosen One is one of the best. The comedy tag is well deserved, as the humor in this series almost always lands. I'm not an easy person to make laugh, and How to Be the Chosen One genuinely had me laughing out loud more than once. And did I mention it's a harem? So instead of one hot guy, we get to see Sun-won bedding several sexy bishonen. This manhwa has a colorful cast of characters. To avoid spoilers, I won't mention some of the characters that show up later. The main character is Cho Sun-won, a 23-year-old college sophomore with a charming personality and outstanding social skills. His acquaintances mention that they could picture Sun-won working at a pyramid scheme or leading a cult because of his magnetic disposition. Even though he has lots of friends, Sun-won finds the tedium of everyday life incredibly boring. His only source of joy is hooking up with the hot guys and having one-night stands. I'm going to be honest, I didn't care much for Sun-won at first. He seemed overly arrogant, uncaring, and shallow. However, being thrust into a new and strange situation where he's less sure of himself caused his character to go through some much-needed growth and change. So much so that the Sun-won of later chapters is almost unrecognizable from his Chapter 1 counterpart. We get to see him open up more to the people around him, and he actually becomes invested in helping the citizens of Abroria. Next we have Versian. At 28, Versian holds the title of the youngest high priest in Abroria. He's a devoted religious fanatic and Cho Sun-won's most loyal follower. While he has some yandere tendencies, it's clear that his deep devotion to Sun-won goes beyond mere obsession. He genuinely cares for him, making his character both intense and intriguingly multifaceted. King Albis of the Eternal Light, the sovereign of Abroria, is an atheist who outright denies Sun-won's existence and constantly clashes with the temple. Despite his skepticism, he's a just and caring ruler who genuinely prioritizes the well-being of his people, making him a strong and principled leader in his own right. Those are the main love interests. However, there are lots of sexy side characters we get to see in compromising situations. But since I don't want to go into any spoilers, I'll only mention the first 3. Aiden, a rookie priest. Riza, a commoner of Abroria. Carl, a knight and the right-hand man of King Albis. One of the things I love most about How to Be the Chosen One is the art style. Every character has a distinct look that perfectly complements their individual personality. On top of that, the artist excels at capturing expressions, which adds depth and emotion to every scene. The emotions of each character feel authentic, from Versian's intense anger to the look of Riza's skeptical glare when Sun-won explains his unusual method of worship. The Bishonen factor is a 10 out of 10 in this one. Every guy you see is hot and extremely doable. I think on looks alone, Riza is my favorite, with Albis being a close second. But then if we throw personality in there, I'm going with Versian every time. There's just something about fictional yanderes that I find so enticing. The story itself is also a terrific read. How to Be the Chosen One strikes a perfect balance between humor and heart, giving readers both hilarious misunderstandings and genuinely touching moments. The characters are easy to get attached to, and watching their relationships grow keeps you fully invested. It's a manhwa that doesn't take itself too seriously, but still manages to deliver on character growth and emotional depth, making it an incredibly satisfying read. Before we get to our number 1 pick, I just wanted to mention there were a few other boy loves I had in mind when I started to write out this list, but then I realized they fall more into the supernatural category, so I'll be covering them later in a video about supernatural boys love. Anyway, let's move on to our number 1 pick. Number 1, Ennead by Mojito. I really hope I'm saying that right. The once peaceful land of Egypt has been stained with blood under the tyrannical rule of Seth, god of war. Horus, son of the god Isis, but not yet a god himself, rises to challenge the throne and put an end to the chaos and destruction. Although the confrontation between Seth and Horus began with hatred, in time it becomes blurred by obsession and desire. The ancient mythology of Egypt comes to life as you've never seen it before in this compelling fantasy boys love. The story dives deeply into the lives and conflicts of the Egyptian gods and spins a narrative that's both captivating and unforgettable. Now, I have to warn you, Ennead delves into some dark, intense themes, often taking readers into moments of raw savagery and despair. For me, this only makes the story more gripping and emotionally resonant. While the plot takes center stage, each character is layered with complex emotions and motivations, making them feel truly unique and compelling. At the heart of Ennead lies the main character, Seth. As far as Seth's character goes, I don't want to say too much, otherwise I'll be veering into spoiler territory. And that actually goes for most of the characters, so for now, I'll just give you the basics. Seth is the sexy, red-headed god of war and the desert. At first, he seems like a stereotypical villain. However, it's soon apparent that his character is driven by a mix of deep-seated anger and unresolved pain. As the god who controls sand, Seth wields immense power over the desert, embodying both its beauty and its harshness. His complex personality, blending ferocity with hidden vulnerability, makes him an intriguing force within the world of Ennead. Now, onto the main love interest, Horus. Horus is the demigod son of Isis and Osiris. Though he's not a full-fledged god, he's still strong in his own right. When he first appears in the story, he comes off as mysterious and stoic. It isn't until much later that we get to see more of his personality come through. And while he does eventually get a face reveal, it isn't until much later. I really love Seth and Horus's interactions in the later chapters. The way they interact goes from serious to quite comical as the story progresses. Ennead has a myriad of minor characters, including the story's antagonist. I won't reveal exactly who the antagonist is because, as you guessed it, it's another spoiler. So for now, I'll just list off some of the minor characters, the first three of which are all Seth's siblings. First off is Isis, the mother of Horus. Isis is the goddess of magic and the protector of women and children. She has a deep disdain for Seth. Next is Osiris, the husband of Isis and Horus's father. Osiris is the god of life and the king of Duat. For reasons that are revealed later in the story, Seth has a deep hatred of Osiris. The last of the four siblings is Nephthys, Seth's wife. Yes, she's Seth's wife and sister, but when you're dealing with ancient gods, this is bound to be a thing. Nephthys is the goddess of peace and harmony. Don't worry though, this is still a boys' love. The story starts out with Seth and Nephthys being estranged. Then there's Anubis, the son of Seth and Nephthys. He's depicted as a young man with an almost childlike appearance. Even though he's the son of two divine beings, he has not yet attained godhood. This next character's title is a minor spoiler. At this point in the story, we don't know his name, so for now, I'll just say he's a comical presence within the world of Ennead. Not much is known about him at this current point, other than he seems to have a thing for Seth. So you know he's always trying to get in Horus's way. Which, personally, I'm all for. I love a good love triangle. As far as the Bishonen factor goes, I give Ennead a 7 out of 10. However, it gets a 10 out of 10 for the Bishojo factor, as there are tons of gorgeous ladies. I could elaborate, but I won't, since this channel is called Bishonen Hunter. Maybe one day I'll do a Bishojo Hunter channel. But for now, let's get back to it. Seth and Horus are both extremely sexy. If I had to pick one, I don't know if I could. I love Seth's long red hair, his loud personality, and his well-defined abs. Horus is just so cute though. I love how he'd do anything and everything for Seth. Also unrelated, but I always picture him sounding like Genos from One Punch Man for some reason. Anyways, I genuinely hope that you do read this one, because Ennead is nothing short of enthralling. It's a sprawling epic fantasy that will immerse you in the ancient Egyptian world of gods, power, and intense rivalries. And while it does have plenty of dark moments, there's a nice blend of comedy in the later chapters to balance it out. So that's gonna be it for my list of top 5 fantasy boys' love stories. What are some of your favorite fantasy BLs? Are there any that you thought should have made this list? Let me know in the comments. I'll be reading some of my favorite comments in the next video. Also, I do apologize about the quality of this video. It's my first time using this kind of software, so I'm still learning. I promise I will get better the more I do this. And lastly, I'm not really much of a social media person, but I did make an Instagram and Twitter account for this channel. So please give me a follow and bear with me as I learn to use Twitter for the first time. Links are in the description.